This is Seal ready. Awesome, ready. well, welcome everyone. Welcome back to the Endurance Physios podcast. My name is Dr. Sam Rockwater. I'm joined, as always, by Dr. Will Gonzaba. How are you, Will?
Doing great, Sam. Glad
You're
to be
living it up.
back. Living it up as always.
Good. You have a good day in the clinic today?
Dude, I wasn't in the clinic today. It was wonderful. I just took like a random Wednesday to, I was still working, doing like the end of the month accounting stuff, which wasn't that exciting, and doing taxes for 2023. But, I wasn't in the clinic. I kind of took the day to myself, got to work out twice, which was nice, and got a lot of stuff done. So it was good. It was good, man.
Look at you, man. What did you do? Did you go for a run, bike?
Yeah,
swim,
dropped the kids
lift?
off. Got a tempo run in this morning. And then I needed a break from sitting at my computer, and it was about 12:30, and I missed a swim workout last Friday. So I thought, you know what? I'm going to go get that swim workout in real quick. Went into the pool, knocked it out. Actually felt really good. It's been a long time since I've done like a true, like proper double, probably years. Maybe not years, but it's been a while. It felt good. Yeah. What about you, Sammy?
I hear you. I was in the clinic today, and I did not get a workout in today, so I guess you made up for it, but
I got one for you.
That's all right.
Oh,
tomorrow.
We should do an episode
about. Tomorrow I'm going to get out.
I've got a question. I thought about you while I was swimming today, since you're a collegiate swimmer. Bookmark this as a potential topic. How about flip terms? We need to talk about that because mine is not pretty.
Yes, but before we can definitely talk about flip turns.
I think there was something else we wanted to talk about today.
Yes, that's correct. Before we go too far down that rabbit hole, our topic today is cold weather training. We figured that this would be a very timely one. Now, I live in Arizona, and you live in Texas, Will. Mm-hmm. So we are not totally maybe the best people to be talking about this currently, as we are definitely the pot calling the kettle black here. Right. Because it was 80 degrees and sunny in Arizona today. But I did grow up in Minnesota, and I did a majority of my training outside. So I do feel like I am at least somewhat an expert in quote unquote cold weather training. But Will, the age old question here, how cold is too cold to train? And when do you go to the trainer or treadmill or lap pool indoors or whatever?
Yeah, personally, it's got to be pretty cold. Like I've definitely done workouts in the mid 20s, and I'll just do it because it is so hot in San Antonio for 6 months that like I just enjoy not being hot, even if it means I'm freezing cold. So, you know what, for me, like to me, what will stop me is like, if it's sleet, obviously, then like I can't ride outside. But I would still run if that was the case. So for me, it's got to be down there. I don't know if I have an exact number, but it has to be pretty nasty. But mainly it's going to be like cold plus precipitation. Like that'll keep me inside. But we've had a stretch for the past month or so here where all of the mornings are in the mid 30s to low 30s. And with the right layers, you just get out and it's fine. So it's gonna take a lot for me.
It's not too bad.
Yeah. What about you?
I'm going to answer this in two different ways. Currently, and then when I also lived in Minnesota. So,
sure.
So currently, anything below 50 degrees is a little chilly for my desert blood currently, which I'm sure I'm going to get all sorts of flack and text messages when this episode drops from all my Minnesota friends. However, though, I would say in general, how cold is too cold? I normally say like anything below freezing is going to be a little more suspect to me. Really, in like the mid 20s is probably going to be like the biggest thing, especially for riding. Anytime you get below freezing and you're riding, like that wind and that wind chill factor can really like get cold really quick, especially if it's sunny out and you start your ride and it's sunny and it's nice and you're rolling, and then all of a sudden cloud rolls in and it can get cold really quick. And so I think you definitely have to be super careful with that. And I don't know. I mean, I think there has to be some sort of medical term for it. Maybe well, it's like a lung burn. You know what I'm talking about? Like when it gets so cold that you kind of have like, it kind of like burns your lungs and like your esophagus a little bit. You know what I'm talking
Hmm.
about?
Yeah, I know what you're talking about. I don't know the medical word for it though.
I don't know the medical word
Yeah,
either. We
yeah.
should we should probably
Maybe
look that
like
up
a.
and figure it out.
I could text
But
I could text my wife. She might know it. Maybe like a bronc. I bet
there you
it's
go.
like Bronco something. We should ask Chat GPT. I bet it would
Probably
know. Anywho, um,
good old
I know
chat
what you mean
GPT.
though. Like
Uh,
that like burning in the throat type of thing that you get, especially if you're
mhm.
exerting yourself hard, and like if it's a hard session outside. Totally.
Yes.
I think
Yeah.
a challenge probably in Arizona too is like the temperature the temperature changes so much within a ride. So like if you're doing a long ride on a Saturday and you're starting as the sun's coming up, it might be 35, but then by 2 or 3 hours, or maybe by 3 hours in, now we're like 55 and 60, and that is a huge difference
Yes.
in like what you should be
Yes.
wearing and how that feels. So yeah, that I think that to me is the bigger challenge more so than just the cold weather. Like if it's consistently cold, then it's consistently cold, you know?
Yeah. I think one thing I know um, is if I go out for a ride in the morning, um, that tends to be I tend to be better prepared in the morning than I am in the evening.
Mm-hmm.
In the morning, mainly because that temperature that I see is the temperature that I dress for, and when the sun comes up, it gets warmer.
Yeah, definitely.
Versus in the evening, it I'm like, oh, it's 60 and sunny, it's great here, and then all of a sudden, it's uh, it's 40 and it's dark and it gets real
Wow.
cold. Um, but I think that's a great like transition into talking about layers and like
Mm-hmm.
why layering is so important. Um, I know in Minnesota, layering was everything. I used to ride fat bikes, and I actually used to race fat bikes, which
That's
was a
cool.
thrill when you're, yeah, dude. When you get like, I remember there's a race in Fargo, North Dakota. Anyways, there was a race in Fargo, North Dakota, and it was on the Red River, and I specifically remember that I got third place, and I averaged 6.8 miles per hour.
That's pretty awesome.
I got third place and I averaged 6.8 miles per hour, like on a bike. Most of the time, if most bike races, like mountain bike races, it's like, 18, 16 to 18, depending on the
Mm-hmm.
terrain, and maybe a little bit less, and road races, it's like over 20. So
Yeah,
to go 7 miles per hour or less
the
and
opposite.
get third was a lot of fun. But like that was a great example of it too. If you're going to race in colder weather, or if you're going to do a really hard interval session, um, layering up to where you might be a little chilly at the beginning, but then you're going to get really warm. And then, just being careful when, if you do cool down and or that race is over, that make sure that you do have warm clothes
Mm-hmm.
afterwards.
Yeah, that's always nice
So
to get out of the cold clothes quickly, or just warm up quickly.
yeah.
Yeah, I don't think I have any like. I'm trying to think of the coldest I've ever done a bike ride in. I think definitely in the teens, and then in terms of racing, I think it was in the teens. It was at Cyclocross Nationals, I think, in 2017. And I remember because it was a sunny day, but it was really cold, and I think there was a little precipitation the night before, so parts of the course were frozen,
Oh, slick.
which well, it was crazy because they were like they looked like mud ruts, right? And it looked like it would just be mud, but when you actually hit it, it was frozen.
Yeah.
So yeah, it was super slick. Um, but I'm just kind of like a warm bodied by nature, and so I think I do well in cold weather, despite having always lived in hot climates. But I remember rolling up to the start line there, and I was just in like just normal bike kit, and it was like 19 degrees, and I was fine, like totally fine after I warmed up, and I felt good like that for probably an hour or two after. But I remember rolling up to the start line and someone being like, "Dude, like, where are you from? You're not cold?" And I was like, "Dude, from Texas." Like, I'm not used to this cold weather, like, but I'm okay with it. Like, I
Not
feel
where you
good.
were,
I feel
not
good.
where they
I
were
feel good.
expecting.
Not what they were expecting. They were from Chicago. He was
uh,
all bundled up, and I was like, dude, no, this was great. You got to air it out a little bit, man. But
yeah.
I think getting to, you know, one thing I have grown to appreciate is like, okay, that was like a one time thing, right? That was fine. There's probably a bunch of adrenaline factored in there, but I've come to learn that if you're going to spend money on good bike clothes, even if we live in warm weather climates, having the right cold weather gear so we can go out and enjoy the winter training, right? Because we don't have precipitation really in these parts, so it's just cold. So get the right layers, get the right bike gear, and it's much more enjoyable. So I don't know if you saw
What?
this, Sam. Go ahead.
Oh, I was going to ask you if you were to like spend your money or like what things, like let's break it up into two different parts here. So you have like a
Mm-hmm.
cycling and a running. If you're going to
Mm-hmm.
spend your money on like one piece of clothing, you mentioned that there's a lot of like make sure you get like good clothing even if you're in colder or warmer weather climates. What one piece of clothing or say like two pieces of clothing for cycling and what two pieces of clothing for running would you recommend to people?
It's gonna all right. I'll do my cycling must haves with it. For me, I would say a thermal bib. I guess the long bib, all the way full leg bib. That's
Yep.
clutch. Actually, I have
Love love those.
the Pactimo ones, and I've had those for years. And those are a really good price point for long full legged thermal bibs. So highly recommend that. And then I would say a thermal jacket for cycling. I've got one, a Castelli one that I've also had probably for 10 years. And it's a little bit weather resistant. So if there's a light mist or even a light rain, like you won't get wet. And
Yeah,
the
it doesn't
sleeves can
absorb.
unzip. Yeah, that's great. So I would kind of put those two as like things for your body, but then you gotta have shoe covers, in my opinion, gloves, and then a thermal bike hat. I know that I just listed five things, but like think of the hat, the gloves.
Way to
Well,
pare it down to two, Will.
but you kind of can't, right? Because like you're if I
Yeah.
had to pick two, I'd probably pick my shoe covers, and this is ridiculous, but the shoe covers and the gloves because I can get over my torso being cold. So those are the two
Hmm.
cheapest things. But you know, generally what they say, if your head is warm, your hands are warm, your feet is warm, or your feet are warm, then like you will be more comfortable. So think of it like this: I picked out like some accessories that you need, and then like normal clothing. So two categories.
Just going above
I
and
can't,
beyond, like always, Will. Above and beyond with
I
you.
can't break it up, man. I really can't because I'm, you know, like are you really that much better off if like your feet are freezing but like your core is warm but you can't feel your toes? I don't know, it's still going to be a miserable ride, so I think you need it all.
Agree. What about for running? What
Man, I
about for
keep it
running?
running. I think is different, right? Because I think you warm up so much more, so you generally need less. It's going to take, I mean, it's going to, I almost never put anything full length pants on, right? Like no joggers or thermals. Like I'll always wear run shorts.
Really?
Always, yeah. I get super hot. And
Wow.
then the most I've
You clearly
worn,
haven't ran in cold enough temperatures then.
I mean, probably like in the 30s, you know, it does not much
Okay.
lower
All
than
right.
that. Not much lower. In the
Okay.
30s, I could jam it out with normal run shorts, and then just like a long sleeve. I like that License to Train shirt from Lululemon, which is basically just like a long sleeve workout material tech shirt. And then
Sure.
I really like simple cotton crew sweaters. You know, no hood. Like just I've got like two or three random ones I've had since high school. I like them, and that's what I that beanie,
Yeah.
gloves.
If it works, it
I just
works,
do that.
man.
It works for me.
Works, it
Works for
works.
me. I'm sure
Yeah.
there's infinite ways to make that more enjoyable, but that works for me. What about you?
Yeah. I think
Give us I want like the
hat
Minnesota
hat.
answers. So not Arizona. It's probably
You,
not like what did you do back in the
yeah.
day? And
What back in
like
the
what did it
day?
look like? Like when you are you running down the road when it's snowing?
Oh yeah. Dude, I mean, the treadmill, dreadmill. I mean, like, yeah, I mean, if you, after a certain point in time, especially living in Minnesota, and then I went to PT school up in Fargo, North Dakota. And so, I mean, there's long winter up there. That's all I got to say. Very long winter. Wonderful people, people I still talk to and are friends with. And I know that I could call them up and they would 100% answer my phone call. So great people who live up there. Um, for clothing. Uh, I think you kind of hit the nail on the head. Exactly, kind of what I would say is like hands and feet are absolutely critical. Um, if you don't have warm feet, if you don't have warm hands, I think that makes your ride pretty dang miserable, like instantly. If you have if your torso is cold, you can always pedal harder to get warmer.
Yeah.
Um, but if you don't have warm hands and warm feet, it definitely is challenging. I remember there was times where like we had fat bike races and it was so cold. Um, the we would actually take the plastic grocery bags and we would put them over our feet and then
I've
put a
seen that.
layer of wool socks or two, and then put on the 45 North like big burly like boots and or like your normal like winter boots, on the fat bike pedals and stuff like that, and go out. And you just got to be smart about it. You have to make sure that you're not like going out there when you're really tired, or like you're not like super far away, and like if you do get a flat tire, like what do you do, like
Oh, good
is
point.
there somebody who can come get you right away, like that kind of thing. And that you're not, hey, like let's go 12 miles out into the woods and then like do like this giant loop. It's like, yeah, that's a good idea as long as like you're close to a road, but if you're totally out in the woods, it's a disaster. Oh, gloves.
Mm-hmm.
Neoprene gloves
Mm-hmm.
are highly underrated. They are warm and they will keep you warm even if they get wet. Um,
Oh.
I got a good pair of neoprene gloves, like thick neoprene gloves, and they are magnificent. There's also essentially it goes up over the top of your hoods. I'm
Oh, I've
brain
seen those.
farting on what they're called, but essentially you can bar mitts, and
Okay.
so you can put your hands in those. If you put your hands in those, they're like toaster ovens. It is glorious.
Oh, jeez.
I actually my first PT job, I actually commuted 20 miles. It was 20 miles each way. So I was riding 40 miles a day to get to clinic.
Dang.
Um, and I went, actually, the crappier the weather, the better it was for me to bike because of time.
Mm.
Going through all the highways and stuff like that, it would be so backed up. I could literally get there faster on a bike. Um, but yeah, I mean, you get bar mitts, you just dress in lots of layers. If anything, I always err on the side of being too hot than being too cold, especially in the winter, because that's super important. Um, but I think feet and hands. The only other thing that I would really say too would be a really solid hat or like beanie or thermal beanie or something like that that goes over your ears and underneath your helmet, for riding. For
Mm-hmm.
running, I used to get like I did run in long thermal tights, in case you're wondering. I know you said
I
you've never
probably.
worn long legs, but I have. Um, and then lots of layers. Um, Not as important for the gloves in running because of the wind chill factor. You're not going as
Mm-hmm.
fast, so you're not going to have as much wind coming through there. Um, but hat was super important, um, because I found if the top of your head stays warm, the rest of your body is also more likely to stay warm. It's one of the biggest places for heat loss, and that's one thing that at least I found super helpful
Mm-hmm.
when I was living in a very cold climate. But
Yeah. You obviously have
just me.
a much more cold experience to speak of. I think this is. I'd be interested to know if you had any strategies for this. So one time, I was up visiting our friend Kevin Schmidt in Portland, and probably like 6 or 7 years ago, something like that. And so he's taking us around Portland, Oregon. It's January or February, something like that. So it was pretty cold, and very rainy. And so I had one pair of they're not neoprene gloves. I guess they're kind of like a knit cycling glove. The ones they come in bright colors like the pinks and the blues and things like that. They have got a
Mm-hmm.
little grip on the
Yeah.
inside. They're actually super warm, but we're riding around all day and it was raining, so they got soaked. So obviously they're no good because they're
Ugh.
knit. And so I get back to my little Airbnb and I was like, I got to dry these for tomorrow. And I was like, how am I going to dry them? Like, it's pouring down rain outside. And so I threw them in the microwave, which was not a good move.
What?
Yeah, that was super
Wait,
stupid.
you
Yeah.
threw some gloves in a microwave?
Yeah, dude. Yeah.
Wait,
Didn't
were
even
you
think
trying to
twice
cook
about
them
it.
or what?
I was trying to warm them up. I was trying to dry them. Like, I didn't have a hair dryer. I was like, I'm gonna throw them
Oh
in there,
no.
dude. Thought nothing of it, and like threw them in there, set
Oh,
them to like a minute, and then I go about my business, like probably in the shower, and I see little not sparks, but like it burnt, dude. Like it caught on fire, and holes burnt right through it. Um, but I wore those gloves still for a long time. Actually, not until this year. I still wore
dude.
those gloves with the burnt fingers. So
Oh my
little finger
gosh.
holes. So that's not how you dry off the glove. But if you don't have a dryer,
Uh,
like, or a hair dryer, I mean, that was my only option. Otherwise, what was I going to do?
yeah,
I
I
don't know.
mean, one thing that we used to do all the time, especially for fat biking in snow, the little in-ground vents. If you have
Oh yeah.
in-ground heating,
Mm-hmm.
so if you don't have floorboard heaters or whatever, if you have the actual vents that sit in the ground, we would flip our boots over and just put them right over the top of that. um,
Mm.
because
Smart.
there's naturally going to be some sort of airflow that goes through there. And so that's really good. Other things that I've used because I was an apartment that didn't have in ground heating. And so I would actually throw it on like, I would throw it on the end of the bar handles and just like let them essentially sit out there and then look and see if you have a ceiling fan. It's like kind of a like ghetto way of doing it, but essentially then you just turn the fan on high and it dries it out.
Sure.
Um, Otherwise, if you don't have a fan, then at least then that the glove is still there's a lot more air that can go through that glove and kind of uh, essentially dry it out as you go.
Sure.
But
Sure.
those are a few like hacks that I've tried um, when I've had like damp things and like gotta get them dry.
I think that's the worst thing is, like when you're drying your or whatever, most of the spike gear, you're not going to run it through the dryer because you're just supposed to let it hang to dry or whatever. Is when they're still slightly damp from the washing machine and you put them on right before a cold ride, like that really sucks.
Yes, it's the
That really
worst.
sucks.
It's the
That really is
worst.
the worst. But it's better than riding through a bunch of snow and things like that. It would be really interesting to know, uh, like those guys. To mention Kevin again, right? Like they don't have snow, but they have just like this crazy extremes in weather where it's cold, it's hot, it rains, it doesn't, all within like those big epic rides that he'll do. In a place that has the type of climate like Portland, Oregon, it would be interested to like go through gear that he would use in some like one of those crazy 120 150 mile rides that he does. I also think about, do you follow Ted King on Instagram?
Mm-hmm.
Yeah,
Yeah,
Ted. I think he just
absolutely.
posted something with like how to ride all winter long in the Northeast. So I'm sure their winters aren't much different from what yours are. Yours are probably worse.
Probably very wet.
Um, yeah,
Yeah.
probably wet. But
Not as
you know,
wet, but
those types. Not to not validate anything that you said with North Dakota and things like that, because that sounds terrible. But um, when people have to go through the extremes within a single event, like how do they manage that? That would be cool to know what kind of tech they use.
yeah, I
So
think I think it's highly variable
yeah,
based on
probably.
like
And
what people have and what they've used and yeah.
I think one thing that makes it maybe a little bit easier is, even here, right? Like when we have the temperature swing just from cold to warm, is now that bike bags are trendy, like you can, if you're going to be out longer, like usually you have that, the frame bag, or you might have a frame bag if you're expecting a temperature change, so you can put your garments in there or whatever it is. Same thing with the handlebar bags. So because it's trendy, you don't look like a dork now because you have storage in your bike.
That's
So
true.
maybe a pro.
Hey
Um,
man, panniers are coming back.
Man, they should. They're sick. They're so practical, man.
Hey, you know what? When I rode the 20 miles in the summer and in the winter, like I had two panniers and
Yeah,
they were wonderful
man.
for carrying stuff. Not necessarily so practical if you're just going out for like a training ride, but if you're commuting,
True.
100%. Um, they're wonderful.
I hate
Yeah,
I hate
I know
commuting with a
too that.
backpack on.
Good.
No, I was just gonna say I hate commuting with a
Yeah,
backpack on, but we don't have to get into
yeah.
that. Um,
Well, I know too that you mentioned that that you found a really good source for like finding layers
mm,
and like how to see that. I've seen a few like online before. I believe Pearl Izumi maybe has one. It's been a few years since I've seen that one. I know Pactimo put out one, but I know
mhm.
you ran into a really good one recently.
Yeah, if you go
Which one
to
was that?
the brand is Velocio, and I'm a big fan of their apparel, the summer, the winter gear, all of it's great. But they had a guide to layering that they put out in the fall, and this is really cool because what they did is basically like break down what you should wear based on a temperature range. So I think they went into three or four different categories. So they called the first one was shoulder season, and that was between 40 and 55 degrees. Early winter between 30 and 45 degrees, and deep winter between 10 and 30. And I think they had like a deep winter plus precipitation. So if you were between 10 and 30 with snow or rain, like, or I guess snow, what would you wear? Right. So you can go to their website. If you just type Velocio, that's Veloco, guide to layering. If you search that, like it'll come right up and it's really nice. And then of course they're going to show you their products, but I like their products a lot. I also will just follow that exact same principle with whatever clothing I have. So I don't have all of their gear for winter, but I'll use my Pactimo, I'll use my Castelli, I'll use whatever, and I've found that gets me like whatever they're recommending. I think it works. So I'm always pretty comfortable on the ride. So definitely check that out because it can be really easy to
Nice.
overdo it or underdo it if you're new to riding in colder weather.
Yeah, that's an awesome resource. Like I said, I know I've seen a few of those, but it's always good to like get takes and find new ones. Do you know is there any resources like that for like runners
Man, that's a
at
great
all? Do
question.
you know of any?
I
I don't know of
wonder.
any.
I wonder if ooh, I want to say like I felt like maybe Tracksmith had something like that, but I could be
Mm.
totally wrong. But I feel like I saw something like that around the holiday time. But I don't know. I don't know.
I
I've seen
mean,
things like this too on Instagram. I think there was a pretty popular reel that was floating around as it was getting colder, where it was just a dude riding, and it basically went through the same things. If it's this temperature, wear this.
sure,
If it's this, wear this plus this. I'm sure that there's something a guide to layering for runners, um, but
somewhere
offhand I
there.
don't know. Yeah, offhand I don't know.
Yeah. All right.
Um,
Um, what about like okay, we talked about going outside. What about once we come inside? Like, do you have any like tips for like rewarming or tips for like when you do come in? I know that frostbite is a real thing and can be extremely dangerous. But do you have any tips for people to hopefully avoid some like long lasting nerve damage or stuff like that from like cold exposure?
Yeah, thankfully, I don't have a ton of experience in that, but the few things that work well for me. We mentioned the other one is just changing out of those clothes and getting into warm sweats and a sweatshirt pretty quickly. So
Mhm.
even my rides, like I'll come in, you'll come in from it. You were well prepared, but like you still have a little bit of chill in your bones, and so it's nice just to get out of the bib. I have the same sweats that I was wearing before my ride, and I'll just throw those on. And then here, we're not riding and training in the freezing weather, so there's not as much of worrying about that gradual warm up. I will say something that I have done wrong before though, and even in the weather here, is going too quickly into a really hot shower. And that'll sting. I don't think you're
Mm-hmm.
supposed to do that, right? Like especially if your hands are
No,
super like
definitely
numb,
not.
you should not run them under hot water. And I've definitely done that by mistake, or just like jump straight into a hot shower before my body just kind of acclimated to room temperature and then go do that. So you should not do those things. Acclimate to room temperature, then get in the warm shower before you do that. But I think those are my only ones. I'd be curious to know what you guys did, bearing all that intense winter weather.
Yes, so intense.
So
Um,
intense.
so hardcore. Um, there was yeah, we did a lot of stuff. I think the biggest thing to think about is really how can I describe it? Like Your general warming principles for frostbite is probably the best guide, like principles to have. And a lot of people, I mean, I'm sure I got frostbite multiple times. I just either was too naive or young or whatever. But I know for a fact that there was a lot of times where I would go out for a ride, my hands and or my toes would go completely numb. Couldn't shift, could barely grab the brakes and stuff like that. And I'm like, okay, I should probably get home. And you're having such a good time, and then you're like, okay, I need to head home. Um, and then once you do head home, the best thing to do is like what you mentioned. So it's anything that you would normally do for frostbite. So you want to get out of that, especially if it's wet and damp. You want to get out of that wet and damp clothing right away, or as soon as you can. Make sure that you have a change of clothing and something that is dry. It doesn't necessarily have to be warm. So like doesn't have to be like straight out of a dryer. It's actually ideal not to have something straight out of a dryer that's not actually warmed. Do not use a warming vest or anything like that. You want to warm back up via room temperature. And what people will feel oftentimes in their fingers and in their toes, they'll feel kind of like that pins and needles kind of feeling. It'll be kind of tingling, burning sensation in the tips of the fingers and into the tips of the toes. And if you really need to, then you put your hands under room temperature water and then lukewarm water to essentially warm back up. Most of the time, by that time, if you're still struggling to warm up after that, you should probably seek medical attention because then you're actually going into hypothermia, not necessarily just frostbite, but hypothermia. And that is a 100% very real medical emergency that needs to be taken care of. And, you know, I would say that that's probably the best way is to just slowly, gradually warm up, um, get dry clothing, and then kind of just slowly, gradually warm up. Even though the first thing that you want to do is go and hop in like a hot shower because you're like, oh, that should feel so good. But that actually, that numbness and tingling and burning, especially if it becomes too intense, can actually lead to long-term nerve damage
Mm.
within the tips of the fingers and stuff like that. I actually have a few friends who are cyclists who don't have sensation in the tips of a couple of their fingers because they would go out and ride so much and they were not adequately prepared and or did not warm up properly when they
Dang,
got back inside. So yeah, that sucks.
that does
That
suck.
sucks.
Rookies.
Yeah. What a bunch of rookies. So let's transition to this. Will, if you get all right, it's the middle of winter. It gets too cold out. You're forced to go on the trainer or the treadmill. Are there any tips, hints, tricks that you have for making those workouts a little bit more enjoyable? Because the treadmill isn't exactly everyone's favorite tool to
Hmm.
use when training. Same with a trainer. So, is there any tips that you would give to people for making those a little bit more enjoyable?
Yeah, definitely. And so we're just talking not just from a temperature standpoint, just in general, making it through on
No,
these
just
sessions,
just in
right?
general, like indoor
Yeah.
training. Yeah.
So kind of the opposite of the cold weather in the summertime. Like I'm forced to do more indoor riding because it's too hot in the evening to get it done, and a lot of my workout windows are midday. So the treadmill at the clinic, we have a Peloton tread, and I would do a lot of my workouts on there. And I actually really liked it. Like at first, I had a lot of resistance to it, but the more I did it, the more I liked it. And so,
You're so cool, Will. You got Peloton
Peloton,
treadmill. You're so cool.
Peloton, I got it because it's small. Like it fits well in the clinic. But we can talk about that later.
No,
Um,
I'm just messing with you.
but
They're cool treadmills.
they are cool. They are cool. So there's two kind of two modes that you can run in, generally speaking, on Peloton. So if I had a prescribed workout from my coach, I could do that. You could do like a scenic run where there's no instructor, nothing like that. It's just like, hey, you're running through Brazil or New York City or something like that. The screen's really big. You can throw your own tunes on there, but that little visual input made the time go by a lot quicker. More change in it. So like, oh, the incline's at whatever for 2 minutes, and then you're going to go back down, and then the pace is changing, and then your pace is up, pace is down. Like a lot of variability within the workout to me makes it go by faster versus like, hey, we're cruising here for 30
Yes.
minutes or 40 minutes. So the
100%.
having some visual input, I think works well. The good tunes, and I think a structured workout that helps a lot as well. Our facility gets super cold and like with the AC works really well. So I didn't have a fan on there. But you know, if your room does not have that, like if you're in a garage or you don't have good airflow, definitely would want a fan up on that treadmill as well. I think the same thing for pretty much the indoor cycling too, man. You know, my tolerance to doing indoor rides used to not be very great, but now, like, you know, I don't love doing it, but I could bang out an hour and a half on the trainer, and be okay with that. But my go to these days are actually this has changed a lot with time, but I'm a big okay, obviously the fans. Right now it's cold outside. I'm right next to a window, so I can crack that open and be more comfortable. And I've got a TV in front of me, so I'll usually like stream something or watch YouTube or something like that. And to me, that works, as well as having variability within my workouts. So that works well for me. I just have different moods, right? Sometimes it's music, sometimes it's TV, and sometimes I just don't do anything. I just like look at the just do the workout, and that's it.
Just zone
Um,
out. Zone
just
out.
zone out. Sometimes you need that, man. Sometimes you need some quiet time, or at least I do.
Amen.
What about you?
Yeah.
What are your tricks?
Um, I mean, I I sweat like a pig, man. So
Yeah,
like,
me too. Me
and
too.
the desert is probably like the absolute wrong place for me because I sweat all the time. Um, and like you said, I think I just run a little hot, you know. And
Yeah.
so I use fans plural. So I normally yeah, yeah, yes.
Just
And
imagining
you're
all
gonna
of them
laugh when I
facing
yeah,
you.
you're gonna laugh when you start hearing. I'll let me describe my my setup here. So I have my trainer, and directly above me is a ceiling fan set on high. I have down on my right hand side. I have you know one of those like little like turbo fan looking
Oh
things,
yeah.
right?
Yeah. Yeah.
So I got one from Costco. It was like $50. And the thing spits out a ton of air, which is
Yeah.
great for when you're cycling. So I have that thing turned on medium. I have one of the big, like circular 18-inch industrial size fans directly to my side, on my other side. So on my left side. So it's blowing directly at me on that side. And then I have, then I have one of those Vornadoes,
Dude, those
which is
are
like a small little
awesome.
12. They're great, man. They
Yeah.
pack a lot of punch for how small they are. They're like a little 12-inch fan, and I will turn that on high, and it will be blasting at my face. My eyeballs are a little dried out normally after about an hour, hour and a half on the trainer. But maybe I should start wearing some sun or like just like clear lenses or
Some
something.
clear
But
lenses. Those are cool.
yeah, but anyways, that's what I use for fans. So I have literally 5 fans on me. Um, right, the floor,
That's a
the
production, man.
side. No, I guess four fans on me. 4 fans on me.
Yeah.
Math is hard. But yeah, I got 4 fans turned on. I'm sure our electricity bill just like spikes every time, um, but that's what I used to keep cool. I found that, especially post COVID here and post COVID vaccine, that I get really overheated really quick.
Mm,
And so I use that. In the winter, I will literally have the window wide open.
yeah.
Again, it is Arizona, so take winter with a grain of salt. It's normally 40 to 50 degrees outside, but I'll crack that thing wide open. I'll open up as much as I can. I will try and keep. I essentially train in like a little spare bedroom, so I'll try and keep that door open if I can, to just let a little bit more airflow flow through. Anything really I can do to keep cold. I have a lot of ice in my water bottles as well. So then when I drink that water, it's at least a little cooling effect, or at least I perceive it maybe as being a little bit cooler. Um,
Mm,
in terms of treadmill, that's I should back up. That's my bike. and on the trainer and stuff like that. I'm the same way, maybe hour and a half max, 2 hours, and I'm like bored out of my mind. I will try things like Zwift and stuff like that to try and like gamify it and do something fun. But for the most part, though, I just kind of hop on there and zone out and watch YouTube videos or whatever. Um, for the treadmill, um, just I will try and pick a treadmill that has a fan on it at the gym and crank that fan. I'll also go if there's we used to have an apartment gym and the windows were able to get open, and so I would crack open the windows in Minnesota in the winter. They probably got really pissed at me for this, but I'd crack open the windows, hook up a fan right in front of me, and so then it blows all that cold air from the window and from the outside onto me, and then run from there. So um, yeah, I guess that's just really trying to stay cool as possible. I don't wear a jersey when I'm on the trainer, or
Definitely not.
yeah, if I'm like at our apartment gym, I would go without a shirt. Hopefully they're cool with
You
that. But
animal.
um, just a beast, man. But yeah, at commercial gym, though, I'll wear a shirt because they'll kick you out for that. But I would say that would probably be like the things I normally do. Sometimes I'll listen to podcasts and just like zone out and like make sure I'm hitting my numbers on the trainer or on the treadmill. Other times though, I'll just watch YouTube. Sometimes I really like watching live sports because you can kind of get into those games, and then all of a sudden you're like, oh, it's halftime, and you're like, oh crap, I already knocked out an hour and a half. Sweet.
Yeah,
You
honestly,
know,
watching football is the best.
yeah, watching football is great
Yeah.
because it's short and it's kind of like it can calm, or not necessarily calm, but I guess make happy with thy ADHD and ADD
Right.
um, brain when you're on the trainer. And other times too, honestly, there's sometimes where I call it a quiet ride. It sounds terrible. My wife thinks I'm a little crazy for it, but I know you probably do a few of those too, where you literally you're just like, I'm just gonna set it for a certain wattage and just go. Um, or I'll go on Zwift and I'll just be like racing random people and random strangers, and they're probably like, what is this dude's
Who's
problem?
this guy?
Um, yeah, who's this guy? But I'd say though that's probably like what I do. I don't know if you have any other tips or anything for the
You,
treadmill
you
or
know,
bike for that matter, or
yeah,
trainer.
nothing else. No, I don't think anything that you haven't said already. I don't know how I forgot about Zwift, but I haven't been using it much the past year. I don't think
Yeah,
so. I think sometimes you just gotta have to. You're gonna have to play around with it, especially if you're one of those people that does a lot of structured training inside. I mean, there's only so much entertainment, but I think that over your
yes,
time of doing it, it might change. Like I used to be a big podcast guy. Now I can't do podcasts while I'm writing because like I'm very aware of how long they're talking, and it makes it feel like it's longer. Music, everything we've already mentioned,
sure.
right? So sometimes just having a mix of things that you can go to makes it feel better. What we have not mentioned, which I haven't tried, but I'd imagine it to be pretty cool, is
What's that?
all the different motion trainers that they have now, right? Like I think
Oh yeah, where they move back
Wahoo
and
just came out
forth.
with they move
Wahoo
back and
just came out with
forth.
one,
Yeah. There's a couple different
and
platforms
side to
for that.
side sometimes.
Yeah, side to side, and they have those. Then there's like the little cheap ones that you can get on Amazon, which apparently work well, where it's just like essentially squishy balls that you put underneath the platforms of your trainer, so you get a little bit of that rocking. But if you're going to be on it for a long time, having a little bit of play in that trainer will make it feel more comfortable, especially like on your saddle. That could be a real a big thing for sure. I have a smart bike. I've got the Stages smart bike, which I love, but I've had a couple harder workouts in the past 2 weeks, and it doesn't move at all. It's so sturdy, so I can get on it and wail,
Yeah,
and it
it's rock
doesn't
solid.
budge. It doesn't budge, and like I'll feel that in my knees the next day. I'll be like, oof, like my knees are a little bit sore because there is no play
Really,
at all. So yeah.
really,
So
huh?
that's another thing to consider too if you're doing a lot of
That's
it.
a good point.
I think it'd be worth your investment. Doesn't have anything to do with temperature, but in terms of being comfortable, that would be a big one.
Yeah,
But
I
that
I think the ultimate overall point here is like if it's cold, like go and enjoy doing what you do outside. And if you can't go outside, or if you don't want to go outside, or if it's too cold or whatever, make sure that you're continuing to make training
Yep.
fun
Great
indoors
summary, Sam.
for
I
sure.
agree. I agree.
Thank you. Awesome. Well, let's wrap it up there, Will. I know that we'll obviously, I'm sure we'll talk more about cold weather as we get going. But I know I really enjoyed talking about cold weather and reliving some of my Minnesota and Fargo days. So thanks for that. Um, and so happy it's 80 and sunny right now. But anyways, thank you all for listening. Hope you guys got a few things out of this. Please like and subscribe. If you would leave a review, that would be much appreciated. And even better, in the comments of whatever platform you're on, let us know your tips for cold weather training and cold weather training outside. I know that we left a lot on the table, and I'm sure other people who either commute and or ride more frequently in nasty conditions can definitely chime in and teach us something. So awesome. Thank you guys. Thanks, Will. And
Thanks,
uh,
y'all.
and we will see you guys on the next episode.